So, as I said, I'm Maggie Parke. I'm from Study in Wales. It's part of Universities Wales. I represent all 8 of the Welsh universities and just kind of help give general information about studying in Wales, especially from the US, specifically from the US, but this works for everybody. So, anybody who catches this recording later and just has questions, my contact details are in the box below the video. Feel free to reach out and ask any questions. Today, we're going to talk specifically about studying the humanities and creative industries in the UK and Wales specifically. I'm going to ask Jackie and Joanne to just introduce yourselves briefly.
I'm afraid to see who goes first. I'll go first. So my name is Jackie. I am the regional officer for the Americas here at Aberystwyth University. I don't have the Welsh or a British accent because I actually came over to study my postgrad and I ended up loving it so much. I have decided to stay in Wales. I've lived here since 2018. So yeah. Joanna, I'll pass to you.
Thank you, Jackie. So my name is Joanne Hopkins. I'm the Regional Head of Recruitment here at Swansea University. And I've been working at Swansea now for almost 3 years, but before that I've worked at 2 other of the Welsh institutions. So I have quite a good background in the different programs available across a range of universities in Wales. So yeah, glad to be here.
Thanks, guys. I also don't have the accent, so you're just gonna have to rely on Joanne's Northern Irish accent to fulfill that criteria, but you'll notice quite a few of us have crossed the line and have become residents of Wales because it has just become our home. So I'm originally from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm actually the daughter of a guidance counselor, so grew up with all of this around me. The college decision, not Wales, but I had Wales too. So I'm going to give you a tiny bit of my background just so you can see how it fits this presentation in particular. I did my undergrad in the US at the University of Mary Washington, but I studied abroad in Wales when I was 20. So I spent a semester in North Wales and I was an English major. I read a series of books when I was 8 that took place in Wales and I was just absolutely smitten. I really wanted to live here, had this wonderful semester abroad, studying Shakespeare and cathedral music and Arthurian literature and learning Welsh and just absolutely loved it. So I came back for my master's in Arthurian literature, because that's a thing. You can study King Arthur at master's level. And then I ended up staying on for a PhD in film and digital media. And I was specifically looking at book to film adaptation like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Twilight, Hunger Games, and fan management in these big event film adaptations. So that's kind of my academic background, but I think that's important for this presentation because there's a real reason why I think people choose to come to the UK for these subjects. So we're gonna outline some of those things here. But first, I just want to give some general overview about Wales, where we are, the country, the distance, all of those questions that I'm sure you're going to get. So that's the UK and we're the red bit, we're Wales. Think of it like states. It's like 4 states that make up a nation: Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and England. We do have devolved governments, so it's like state government, but we also have this national government based in London. Wales is about 2 hours from London on a direct train, from South Wales about 3 hours from North Wales. So I always like to point that out because everybody knows London and all of these kids come up to us saying, I really want to study in London. We're like, well, you can, but you could also live, on the ocean next to a castle in the mountains in these smaller, safe, affordable cities and just get to London when you want to. I actually teach in London on a Monday. And so I take the train, well, in normal times, not currently. I take the train down there every Monday. Teach for 3 hours, hang out for office hours, usually meet up with a friend for a drink or a nice meal, and then take the train home. But where I live, it's about 70% cheaper than living in London. And the quality of life is pretty phenomenal. So I just like to give that perspective. The whole of the UK is just not that big. So it's a direct train, easy to get down to London. From North Wales to Dublin, it's about an hour and a half on the ferry. It's about 2 hours to Manchester on the train, about 4 hours to Edinburgh. It's about 2 hours on a plane to anywhere in mainland Europe. So you can pop to Italy for the weekend. And it's about 7 to 10 hours to the US on direct flights, 7 to the East Coast, 10 to the West Coast, which sounds like a lot, but when you start to break it down, it's really not. I used to drive 6 hours from Pennsylvania to Virginia for college, and now I fly 7. It's a Netflix movie marathon. It's 3 feature films and you're there. And you just get used to it. And the airport pickups that the universities offer and the easy transport links for public transportation just make it really doable. I lived here for 9 years without a car. You're totally fine without a car. Public transportation is fantastic. So all of these things that I think people just get a little bit hung up of like, how does this work? Who, what, you know, we're happy to kind of get rid of that veil and just be like, this is doable. You can do this. So anyway, so there's the overview. I'll just touch on a few things. This is Cardiff, the capital city of Wales. We do have wonderful metropolitan areas. It does have a London feel, but it's incredibly walkable and accessible, and a bit more affordable. So we've got right there in the Cardiff Bay, you've got cafes and restaurants, the government buildings where the Senate meets, Principality, rugby stadium. We've got BBC studios there. So it's a proper metropolitan city with easy access to all the things that you would want. But you can walk across it in about 45 minutes. But then we also have these. We're the castle capital of the UK, of Europe, sorry. We have more castles per square mile than anywhere in Europe. There's 4 within 20 minutes of me. This is one of them. The nice perk of these is if you are studying arts and humanities, you might have classes in these castles. Most of the castles have a finished room, so it looks like it did back in the 12th and 13th century. And a lot of them will offer classes space. So if you're studying Celtic archaeology or Norman history or something like that, you could have a class in there. If not, you can go the route that I went, and I just bring my books to the castle and I would read against the castle wall whenever I had the opportunity because it was just magical. We also have 3 national parks making up almost 25% of the country. So natural beauty is a big thing that Wales is known for. It's wild, it's wonderful, it's absolutely lovely. And even in the center of Cardiff, you're probably only 20 to 30 minutes away from a view, maybe not this one because this is North Wales, but a view very similar to this. This could be the Gower Peninsula, which is down in South Wales. So we just have these wonderful green, wild spaces. Our students also love the coastal walks, the Heart of Office Dyke. There's these wonderful paths and hiking trails throughout Wales that students can take advantage of. Just a quick overview of what it is to study in the UK. Main reason I came to the UK was location. I wanted to live in the UK. I wanted to have this Celtic experience, to feel like I was overseas and hear another language because Welsh is spoken here, but everybody that speaks Welsh speaks English. Welsh is offered for free to all students. So if they want to learn Welsh, you can, but you do not have to know Welsh, don't worry. So I loved that that was just an option. I loved the proximity to the big cities, but the safety and the beauty of where I was living. I stayed for the academics and the cost. Academics are shorter, they're much more focused. It's 3 years for a bachelor's, 1 year for a master's, and 3 years for a PhD. They're shorter because we don't do gen eds. So the student does need to know what they want to study. They don't need to know what they want to do with their lives. They just have to know what they want to study. We'll help them with the employability and job opportunities and internships and things like that. But they just need to know their subject because they start on day 1 in that subject. The first year is really general. The second year you focus a little bit more. The third year you focus a little bit more. So again, they don't have to know exactly. They don't have to be experts in the field, but they have to know the area that they want to focus in on. And then cost is the main reason I stuck around. Excuse me. Comparable universities in the US that I was looking at were between $35,000 and $55,000 a year. Universities in Wales are between $14,000 and $28,000 a year. And that's before scholarships. All of our campuses do offer scholarships. We work with a number of scholarship bodies, Gilman, Fulbright, Global Wales. A number of our campuses are FAFSA eligible, GI Bill. So we have a lot of opportunities and you're allowed to work while you're over here. So you could get a part-time job up to 20 hours a week during term time and full-time during holidays. I became an RA, so I didn't pay rent. I got a part-time job at the cinema, so that helped with groceries. So all of these things kind of put together, it ended up that my tuition was, I was looking at schools that were like 48 and 52,000 a year. My tuition was $11,000 a year. After scholarships, I was paying $7,000. And then for that, I filled out the FAFSA and got loans. So yes, I was in debt, but I was in debt about $35,000 at the end of a PhD. And I was okay with that. And I got to live in Narnia. So it was pretty great. I also jotted down the entry requirements here just so you're aware of them. All of the Welsh campuses are asking for the same things. We're looking for GPA tests if you've taken them, and then upper level education. We'll all be looking for different numbers depending on which course you want to do, what level that course is, rankings, competitiveness, things like that. But we're all looking for those 3 things. All of our campuses are also test flexible now because we definitely understand the issues with getting the SATs They're no longer offering the subject tests, the AP exams, all that. So we are looking at every application individually. We're going to be looking at what level the student has taken. If they want to study English literature, want to see strong grades from APs and honors, so we're going to be looking at what kind of student they are in the field that they want to study with us. Just did that. Letter of recommendation, we do only ask for one, and we want it to be from a teacher in that subject. So it needs to be from somebody that can speak to that student's ability in that field. If they know somebody else better, they've had a longer relationship with them, have worked with them, you can always send a second supplemental reference directly to the university. The one that you would upload onto UCAS or Common App or wherever you're applying, that would be from somebody in that field. And then personal statements are quite different in the UK as well. There's loads of resources on YouTube and online about this, but the main gist of it is that it's more like a cover letter to a job application. We don't talk about summer camp. We don't talk about horseback riding. It's not like the American statement. It's very much about, why do you want to study this? What piqued your interest? What preparation have you done? What questions do you have coming into this that you're looking forward to answering? We want to know a bit about your passion, your preparation, and why you want to study this with us. This is Aberystwyth University, so Jackie will tell us a bit more about this, but also just to touch on some of the general stuff. Our campuses are really friendly and safe. They're in beautiful locations. We have excellent student support as well. Like I said, we pick students up at the airport, we bring them back to the dorms. We run classes on how to open a bank account, how to get a doctor's appointment, how to get a job, walking tours of town to find the best phone plan for US students, usually led by US students. I always pointed out where to get your best peanut butter, things like that are just big deals when you're in a new nation and you're a little bit nervous. So we definitely look after the students in terms of student support, but then we also have very organized student support services, learning disabilities, financial support, housing. Housing is also guaranteed at most of our campuses, and a lot of them will look like this. They're traditional looking US type style dorm rooms. The difference is they're single accommodation. So everybody has their own bedroom and their own bathroom usually, and then you share a kitchen with maybe 7 other people. Some of the campuses won't have on-campus accommodation, but they would work with a private accommodation office to make sure that it's, contracts are what you would want them to be and it's affordable and all that stuff. So they just kind of outsource that element. But for most of the campuses, it's guaranteed on-campus accommodation. Okay, blitzing into this info now. Arts and Humanities in the UK, it's a 3-year bachelor's and a 1-year master's. I put those together because a lot of our students do plan on coming for 4 years. It's similar to their friends in the US, it matches expectations, but in 4 years they have a master's, whereas in the US that can take 6 or 7 years. Like I said, it's a really broad first year. So my old department was creative industries. The first year, everybody's pretty much studying the same stuff. So if you're a media student and at the end of the first year, you're like, oh no, I'm actually really into script writing. It's fairly easy to switch from one to the other within the same department. If you start with media and you want to switch to ocean sciences, that's a little bit trickier. You might have to start over again. So just be aware of that it is structured in this 3-year style. So you have to know kind of generally what you want. But that first year is really broad. So you get a little bit of flexibility to learn a lot about the industry. You do have options, which we'll hear about in a bit, about industry placement and study abroad. So you can spend a full year in a job working in industry or overseas. We also have a focused 3rd year with an independent research project. So students can really go after that thing that they're really interested in. They can make their own film, they can write their own novel, perform their own piece of music, whatever that thing is. They can really dig into that in their final year. Okay, I'm going to pause and pass over to Jackie, who's going to tell us a bit about studying at Aberystwyth.
Hi, so here is one of my favorite pictures of Aberystwyth. It's right on the seafront, and it really showcases just the amount of history that's at your doorstep in Aber. So you'll see on the far left side of the picture, that's our World War II memorial, well, World War I and World War II memorial. And then right in the middle, that is our tiny little remnant of our castle in Aberystwyth. But then to the right, that is our old college, which is one of the most historical buildings in Aberystwyth. So I'm just going to briefly touch on 2 specific subjects in Aber that relates to the humanities, so history and creative arts. creative writing. But actually, can you go back to the previous slide? But we do also offer creative art degrees, such as we have filmmaking, we have, sorry, I'm blanking. We also offer different variety of arts, such as fine arts and poetry and all these other ones. They're all listed on our website, and my mind is blanking. I clearly have not had enough coffee today. But whenever you are studying at Aberystwyth, a lot of times your courses will be able to take you on field trips, even if it's just field trips within the town. I came and I studied history for my master's, and we took many field trips, and the field trip was just be like, there's a museum in the middle of town, be there at noon. But it was just nice to get out of the classroom and to start doing hands-on engagement within the class itself. So that also then leads onto a variety of hands-on volunteer opportunities. I'll mention it later, but we're very fortunate in Aberystwyth to have the National Library of Wales, and other locations also have these hands-on volunteer opportunities available for students. And this is where your personal tutor, which is very much similar to your advisor in university, they'll be able to come at you with all these different opportunities, be like, hey, there's this volunteer opportunity that's relevant to your degree, you'll graduate with experience, this is where it's at, go and tell them I sent you. So lots of students will have that engagement, not just at Aber, but within all the Welsh universities. And then again, same with what Maggie said, that they're very focused degrees, but then there are some degrees that are called joint honors, and that's very similar to a dual major in the US. So you can have history paired with international politics. The only catch is that they tend to be more linked than they would be in the US. So in the US, you could study history and biology if you wanted to, if you could manage it. It'd be really tough, but you could manage it in the US. Here, you can't do that. But almost all courses do have an opportunity to study abroad, whether that's called a year placement or a small, shorter summer placement. If you do the year placement, then your degree is actually stretched to a normal 4-year degree that would be recognized in the US. So next slide. Here is one of our buildings on campus. It's a nice contrast to our seafront, where we do have some buildings on the seafront, but this is it's a mix of classrooms and our library that is on campus. So with creative writing, we also offer writing retreats. Can't present today. But this goes to a 18th century cottage that's in the middle of the Welsh countryside. It's called Gregernog, and that's where all of our creative writing students go. And I think our international politics, so a lot of our departments will go there for this retreat style, where they'll go in depth into the course material, and they'll come back with industry experience from alumni that come in as well. And I did mention we also have the joint degrees within creative writing, specialist classes. One of my co-workers actually graduated with creative writing, and she left her recruitment position because she's now a fully published author who just released a book last month. So that's pretty amazing. And there's wide employability with these degrees within Wales and in Aber, where you can have, for instance, with creative writing, you can get jobs all the way from journalism, publishing, to being a published author, as I said. And within these creative writings and the humanities, so with creative writing and then our arts degrees, you do graduate with this huge extensive portfolio that you can then take into when you're looking for jobs. Next slide. I did briefly mention it. Here in Aber, we're very fortunate that we have the National Library of Wales. This is one of the 5 copyright libraries in the UK. I always like to say it's our own little tiny Library of Congress. So whilst it is in Aberystwyth, we have students all over Wales. They come to it. It's a lot quicker than going all the way to London in some circumstances. I know Maggie said that she came and she studied in it a lot during her PhD. There's a huge, extensive collection. They have museums, archives, reading rooms, a wonderful cafe that I spent way too much money in when it was open. They have year-round events and exhibitions. That's just good to go as a student to experience the Welsh culture. They had something called the Nantios Cup last year. Well, not last year, 2019, where'd the year go? Which is what the Welsh would say is the Holy Grail. So that was a really cool exhibit, just to see this other side of, I never knew that there was a Holy Grail apparently in Wales, and it was just interesting to see that as well. They'll bring in lecturers from all over the country to talk over a wide variety of subjects, whether it's history, art, poetry. They usually have lots of events going on and are always listed on their websites, and then lectures all over Wales. They love to promote it on their Instagrams, Twitter. It's just a great hub of scholarly energy. And that's it for me. I'm going to pass on to Swansea, and I'm not going to keep flustering my presentation.
Thank you, Jackie. So for the Swansea element of this presentation, what I've decided to do is just start with a really brief overview of the types of courses that are involved in our College of Arts and Humanities. So the majority of the universities across Wales will have a college named similar to this, which focuses on the arts and humanities. Some of them may be more focused on the creative arts. So like the University of South Wales has a creative arts campus right in the heart of Cardiff City that touches more on the likes of music, film, drama, radio, that type of thing. For us, our focus is on the English language, creative writing, literature, modern languages, media, PR, politics, and history. And on the next slide, it just gives a list of some of our more popular programs among the US, and but just to touch on to kind of go an overview of what students can expect in this program. And Jackie did a really good job of talking about the kind of straight honours or the joint honours that students can do, that double major type approach. And really that in the UK, in order for a student to combine two subjects, they have to be in a related field. So we can do Egyptology and ancient history, for example, or media and communication, or we can do politics and one of the modern languages. But for media and communication, for example, that this covers all things like print, broadcast, film, new media, and includes tuition by industry professionals as well. So all of the Welsh universities rely really heavily on the fact that we are connected with industry. We can give students that kind of real life experience of what is it going to be like to get the job after the degree? What is it like to hear from those professionals who are in that working environment? And for our BA Media and Communication, students do things like radio and video production, digital and social media, journalism, public relations, branding, and marketing. And in that first year, it's an exploration of all of them. And as students progress through years 2 and 3, they begin to carve out which side is their passion in. What is it they would eventually like to do more of? So they could do their final year project on journalism and do a really exploratory piece on something in journalism, or they could choose to do something related to digital and social media. And we have, in a lot of the universities across Wales, have the opportunity for students to do a work placement to have that first-hand experience as part of their degree. And there's also the opportunity then, as Jackie mentioned, to study abroad either for a semester or for a full year. And that particularly comes in, I mean, for a lot of industries or for a lot of subject areas, that's of real interest, but things like ancient history and Egyptology, the opportunity to study abroad for a semester a year somewhere across Europe where they can explore that a little bit further is fantastic. For a student who's doing something like international relations and Spanish, they can go and live for a year in Spain and really improve their language skills. So it really helps to give them the most rounded degree possible, so that they have all of the theory, the practice, and whatever kind of experience goes hand in hand with that as well. And for our politics program, that is UK, EU, and international politics. So it looks at all levels. And again, as an example, when students begin their studies, they look at governance, practice of power, policy, political economy, and then they get to choose and kind of carve out for them what is the area of politics that they have the most interest in. What is it that they would like to really specialize in at master's level? And it's really great for students to be able to do a 3-year focused undergraduate degree, and then if they choose, do a specialized master's degree for 1 year after they finish. So for a student could come to the UK for 4 years, study abroad for 1 semester as part of that, but end up with a master's at the end of those 4 years, and a specialized master at that, which is really fantastic. And for us, one of the specializations we have is in ancient history, classical civilization, and Egyptology, focusing on ancient Egypt. And on the next slide, it's just some examples from our Egypt Centre. So we're really privileged here at Swansea that we have Wales' only museum of Egyptian antiques. So it's the largest collection of Egyptian antiques in Wales, with over 5,000 objects here on campus. So we have it based on our Singleton campus, and students can volunteer at the museum. And that can be volunteering to be museum learning and education. It could be collections management, events, front of house. So for students who have a real interest in history and perhaps eventually might like the idea of perhaps going to work in a museum, that it gives them that opportunity to experience it firsthand. And we also work with the community so that young kids can come in and volunteer at the weekends and help to kind of branch out in their skills, and introduces them to the university as well. And then just the last bit for me is just about the student support and activities while they're on campus. So of course, students will be here to study first and foremost, but they will have all of the support that they need with the admissions team, with the international support. Maggie mentioned airport pickups, and Jackie mentioned the tutors, that they will have an academic tutor who will be there to mentor them through their program. But then there's all of the fun side, the clubs and societies, and in the area of arts and humanities, that the clubs and societies can be a really strong feature of students' time at university. And it's just really great for students when they get to university to find those little pockets of people who have the same interests and experiences as them, that they can really explore further and just get into those extra friendship groups as well, which is really nice. So yeah, and the only other thing that I don't think we mentioned is that, and it's something that we've been talking about in lots of these programs, is that just for support with disabilities and access to different campus supports and things on campus, that one of the questions on the application forms to study in the UK is about disabilities and students disclosing if they have any disabilities. That's not seen by the admissions office. Nobody at the admissions office uses that information. They don't have access to it. What happens is that information is sent directly to our disability offices so that they can make provisions for whatever that student needs to ensure that they can have access to those classes. So it's just something to mention, that it is, there's a reason we ask for it, and it's not linked to admissions at all. It's linked to making sure that students are supported as fully as they can be when they get here. Yeah.
It's a real revelation for us. We didn't realize that that was a thing that people were concerned about sharing in the US application process. But for us, it's very practical. It's like, this is so we can prepare and make sure that we have everything ready that you might need when you come to campus. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Jackie, for both that. If you can't tell, we've been doing a lot of presentations recently. So thank you for your patience as we put this all together. I think just a couple of other things that I'd want to note is that question about performance and repertory study. We do have a Royal College of Welsh Music and Drama, so that is an option to study in Wales. They work very differently with auditions and things like that you would expect from a repertory school. But all of our campuses that offer creative studies will have that performance professional element. It's just alongside the academic element as well. So when I was a film student, it was super hands-on. It was very much about take this camera and go make things. And I had a placement with a production company. I worked on film sets. I graduated with IMDb credits. So it was fantastic for employability. I had 3 job offers from 2 different industries by the time I finished my degree. So all of those things were kind of in place, but it ran alongside a true academic program. So I was doing all this practical work, but I was very much looking at why these things were done the way that they were doing, what's happened before, what's happened after, really honing critical thought, that kind of sharper eye that you need in the arts. For the music, that you would have the performance element alongside an academic performance of an essay or a piece that you're going to put together. So all those things kind of work in balance. So yeah, I just want to make sure that that's clear, that we do performance, but it will be alongside an academic element as well. So just popping this slide up here so you can see the 8 universities. I consider myself the matchmaker. So if you do ever work with a student and you're not sure where to go and who to talk to, you can always drop me a line. I'll put my email in the chat, and it will also be underneath the video on YouTube if you're watching this later. So basically you could email me and say, I've got a student really interested in music, doesn't want a big city, and here's their transcript. And we would be able to tell you where that would be a good fit. So then I would introduce you to the universities that would suit that. We are very much about transparency in Wales. So if you send us a transcript and say the student wants to study this, would they get in? 9 times out of 10, we'll be able to tell you yes or no. And if it's no, we would be able to tell you what to work on, what we're missing, what we need to see. So you would have that information for that student. So excellent to reach out to us when that student is a junior. Absolutely fine to reach out to us when that student is a senior. We do accept applications until the end of June. Sometimes even after that, if there's space on the degree, if there's space on the course, you can always reach out to us. It has been known that we accept students in August for a September start. I don't recommend that. It's a lot of pressure to get all of your paperwork sorted, but it is an opportunity. So if you see seniors that are still looking for options, just know that the Welsh universities remain open for those applications. But in general, we work towards a January 15th deadline. So you can keep that in your noggin. I'll stop sharing my screen here. I'm going to take a pause because we've just thrown a lot of information at you. So I hope that was helpful. I would love to answer questions. So if you want to turn this into a conversation, please do. Yeah, I'll just pause there. So Bobby or Sarah, any questions from you guys? Marcia, you're here too. Hello.
I do have a question. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's kind of about a specific student. She knows that she really wants to study in the UK. She's obsessed with castles, so it sounds like Wales would be an excellent place. However, her problem is she doesn't have any idea what she wants to study. So I was wondering if there's any, I know England has a few liberal arts programs. I was wondering if Wales offers something like that, or just maybe a BA that maybe she can choose her major kind of in the second year, or what would you suggest for her?
It depends what her kind of area is. And guys, feel free to jump in with this. But I mean, if she has a general area of study, I was kind of similar, that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew it was something in the creative field. So we had these departments that were broad like that. So they are interdisciplinary departments. So my creative industries department probably had about 45 degrees within it. So if I started in that, my first year was really broad across that. Yes, I could pick one specific thing, you know, maybe it was film studies, but I could change across that range. If she's not sure if she wants to do, you know, film or politics or history, you know, if it's still really broad, we don't have something that's all encompassing like that. If she's a sophomore or junior, the main thing I suggest is she starts dabbling in those things. You know, go sit in on those classes, go take some community college classes, really expose yourself to what that industry is. I was pre-med when I entered undergrad. I very quickly learned that I should not have been pre-med. So sometimes it's just being exposed to that I think gets them to focus. But if she knows she's interested in literature but doesn't know what she wants to do with that yet, we can help guide that. So it might be worth just having a conversation with the US champion about what the options are. Or if you're not sure which campus, to just give a shout to me, and she can always drop into a Wales Wednesday and have a chat or something like that. Does that help?
Yes, thanks so much.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if there were any universities that had like a dance component or a dance degree. Just throwing it out there.
Do either of you?
Yep, so we don't at Swansea, but the University of South Wales does have a BA in dance, and that's based in their Creative Industries campus in Cardiff City. I don't know if any others do.
I think Trinity St. David does as part of their theater program. So it's not dance specific, but I think it's incorporated, and they have a really well-known theater program. There's actually a YouTube video specifically about that one.
Yeah, at Aber, it's incorporated into our theater program, but we have lots of dance societies that a lot of the theater students then join up. I think we have show dance, K-pop, classical dance, all these different dance styles.
And that's worth noting too. I mean, when I was an undergrad, I was a D3 rower, you know, at a Division III school, and then I joined the club rowing in Wales. And I think there's this kind of divide in our brains that it can't be the same level as what we're used to in the US. And it is. It's very intense in a good way and very professional. And all of the UK campuses have agreed that Wednesday afternoons, there's no classes, so students can participate in their clubs and societies and compete in sports and meet for performances and things like that. So there's this real structure around having this as part of the student life. So if students want to major in something like business and creative studies, but then still dance, they can absolutely still have that opportunity. I think people get a little deterred when they hear that you have to choose one subject, you can't do anything else. Oh, there's so many ways to do those other things. You can absolutely sit in on the classes that just interest you. It's just having a chat with that professor and saying, can I sit in? And it's an audit, but there's no formal process for it. So I sat in on cathedral music because I was just keen to do it. You can take languages for free. You can take usually like photography and art classes and things like that for free or really low cost on campus. So there's definitely ways to keep up those personal interests with the clubs and societies and everything else. It's just that your major is your major. You're paying for the course. Like that's what your structure is. Everything else is just an extra that you're welcome to participate in.
Thanks. My daughter's interested in creative writing, so this has been great to hear. And I want to go to Wales. So
there you go. And creative writing is a great one here too, because again, there's a couple ways to do it. So there's a couple of campuses, you can definitely just say, I want to be a playwright and go focus on that. But most of our campuses, you'll do playwriting, prose, poetry, narrative. Some campuses focus on professional writing. So it'll be travel writing, blog writing, journalism, that kind of aspect of it. Some are starting to focus on digital writing and transmedia storytelling. So like these new ways that stories are being told across internet platforms. They might do graphic novels, you know, these things that are becoming much more mainstream and incredibly profitable industries. They're now being specialized in our creative writing programs as well. Cool.
Hi, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. It was exciting to me. I had no previous knowledge of university in Wales. I'd like to ask you regarding non-US diplomas, for example, from Brazil, if there is a standard requirement of maybe an extra year at university before applying, or APs, or if it's university, you know, case by case.
It tends to be case by case. We would look at that student and what kind of background they've come from. I was actually the Americas manager when I was at a Welsh university, so I took care of North and South America. And for Brazil, we would look at each individual student and see what their high school equivalent would be. Generally, if you just did a run-of-the-mill Brazilian public high school, then it would be 1 year at university or come over to one of our preparatory years. So a lot of our campuses have, what are they called? I'm blanking on what the prep year.
Foundation programs.
Courses.
Would it be
Thank
like
you.
a foundation program? Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so those are your general two options that you can come for a foundation course. You live on campus, you are a member of the community. It's just kind of like a year 0, and then you start years 1, 2, and 3 of your program. Or you can do 1 year at a Brazilian university and come to us. Sometimes the courses that are offered in Brazil, however, are quite high level. And if we can see that on the transcript and verify it again, verified against all of our academic criteria, then you might be able to skip that and start in year 1.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.